Hi, I'm Becki Hyde. My pronouns are she, hers. I'm a practice lead with Pivotal. I work in our services organization. I am a practice lead consultant with a background in design and a little bit of a stint in product management. I refuse to give up that little aspect of my expertise, although I do identify mostly as a designer. I've been with Pivotal for about a year. Prior to that, I was with a very large health insurance company, so I've got some experience with big enterprise. You may be most familiar with our services org through our on-site at Pivotal Labs engagements, which I'm sure many of you have participated in. I'm part of a cohort of consultants who work with our clients to ingrain, adapt, and scale the practices that we teach in an immersive environment in Pivotal Labs. So once you've done some labs engagements and you say, hey, this is great, I love it, I want to scale this across hundreds or thousands of people building software, how do you do that? So I tried my best to help with that sort of thing. As I said, I help our clients adapt XP, Lean, and UCD, help them build teams, change culture, measure outcomes, and scale agility. I've spent the majority of my professional career in what's often referred to as the Pivotal Way. I'm very fortunate to be in a position to have had many years of experience working in this way. It's a great way to work. And I'm really fortunate to work side by side with our clients to do that, while holding true and adapting these practices while holding true to Agile principles that provide real benefits to teams and businesses. So, let's get right into the good stuff. We have some problems in the software industry, in the technology industry. As software practitioners, we work in a rapidly changing world. No matter what industry your business is in, what vertical you're in, whether that be finance or healthcare or manufacturing, we share the challenges of people working on software, right? So before I get to the solution to our problems, let's admire our problems for a little bit, because that's always fun, but we won't linger here too long. So these are the three aspects that you're probably most familiar with when we talk about the problems we face in software product development. The previous talk did a great job of talking about how different roles on a team address these problems of viability. Is this product viable? Will it increase revenue? Will it decrease cost for our business? Is this something worth investing our money in? Desirability. So is this product desirable? And that's not just about love and delight, it's about adoption, right? So we build software for people to use to solve problems. Is it actually going to do that for them? And of course, feasibility. Is it even possible for us to build this thing? And is it reasonable, more importantly, for our company to build this thing? So when we think about feasibility, it's not just is it technically possible, is it a good technical choice for our company? And that differs from company to company. So we're pretty familiar with these three problems, but I want to talk about three additional problems that are kind of unique to the time in which we as practitioners are developing software. Reducing risk. So we're engaged in a very risky endeavor, software development. We don't know if the thing is going to work, if it's going to solve the problem, if it's going to make money or reduce cost for our business. There's so many unknowns that we've actually started talking about unknowns in terms of whether we know about them or not. Have you heard about known unknowns and unknown unknowns? That's how risky our business is. So how do we reduce risk, right? We also need to go fast. That's just a fact. We have to deliver fast. Our customers, our users, our business partners, internal and external, they are not going to tolerate quarterly or yearly or longer release cycles anymore. It's just not acceptable. So we as technologists sometimes feel like we're scrambling to figure out how we're going to create successful products with the speed that we need to meet our commitments, to meet the needs of the marketplace. The pace of change is only accelerating, by the way. Tomorrow's products and services are not going to be the stuff that we're working on today, and we have to be able to meet that change head on and adjust to it for the success of the work we do and for the success of our careers, which brings me to developing skills. This is a big one. Because the rate of change in our industry is so fast, we as practitioners have to stay relevant. Leaders have to set their teams up for success in a world of unknowns. So if we look at Twitter, which is sort of our industry water cooler, you see a lot of questions popping up on the subject of emerging skill sets and intersecting skill sets. Questions like, should designers code? Or should I specialize in a specific skill or tech stack, or should I be a generalist? What's the difference between a product owner and a product manager? Or should engineers be full stack? These are heated debates in our industry, and I think that a lot of this has to do with the rapid pace of change in the technology we use, the activities we perform in order to get software out the door, and how we work together with one another. So much of the tech that we work with today didn't exist 10 years ago. How many of you were deploying to a platform as a service in the early aughts, right? So for those of us who thought that our formal education was going to prepare us for the rest of our career, it sometimes can feel like shocking to find that the tools and methodologies and the things that we built when we were younger are now obsolete. And if the job that I do today is not going to exist tomorrow, and the job I do tomorrow I can't take a class for today, how am I going to stay relevant? So we've got some stuff to deal with. So before I get to the solution, I want to share with you all 3 stories of teams that I've had the pleasure of working with and how we addressed some of these problems in a specific context, because I think stories have power to make things real for us. So first of all, working across the design and engineering divide to create products that people love with limited resources. The need for designers and engineers to collaborate is greater than ever. These are the roles that bring life into a product concept. You have an idea, but it doesn't get built without engineering, and it doesn't solve a user's problem without good design. So when these 2 roles are working together and working together well, we can build quality, effective experiences and products. When these 2 roles are out of sync, it can be really painful to get anything shipped, let alone something that you're proud of. Because design and engineering work so closely together, their conversations about implementation detail can generate new ideas and elegant solutions. So many years ago, I was working on my first truly agile team. We were building an iPhone app for members of our health insurance plan. I was a designer on that product team. And I had an experience while working on that team that, while it seems small in the moment, was really transformative in how I approached my work as a designer, and it changed the way that I thought about my role on the team and about how we build software. So one day, one of the engineers on our team was working solo, which was somewhat unusual for him. We were practicing paired programming, but as it happened, we had somebody out on vacation. So we were odd that week, and he was working solo, and I was the only designer, so both of us were standing side by side, working independently on me on design stuff, him on implementing a feature. And he looks over at me and he says, "Becki, do you want to pair on this feature?" And I was like, that sounds really scary because this is an iOS app. And while I know a little bit of HTML and CSS, like I certainly don't know how to build an iOS app, and I really don't want to break anything. But the engineer in question was a really nice guy. We'd been sitting together for weeks. He was really friendly and easy to work with, and he was inviting me into the space, and I had time. So I was like, sure, why not? I'll give it a shot. I'll at least sit there and watch you code while I, do this and don't mess anything up, right? So we only spent a few hours pairing together, but by the end of it, I was actually manipulating values in the code. We were laying out a new screen for the app, nothing terribly complex. I wasn't writing classes or anything. I was adjusting visual design values, but it taught me so much about how the design idea that I had in my head and that I created in Adobe Illustrator actually became a real thing in the product. It certainly doesn't make me an engineer that I spent a few hours pairing with an engineer one day, but it gave me a much deeper understanding of what's possible to do in the technology that we've chosen, what's easy to do, what's difficult to do, and what's downright impossible. So the key takeaway, here's our first key takeaway from these stories of collaboration. Collaboration creates shared ownership and understanding. That single pairing session, like I said, it's not going to teach me everything I know about development, and it's certainly not going to make me an engineer, but each time I, as a designer, sit down with an engineer and look at the code, I deepen my understanding of how our product works. Then that knowledge informs my design choices, so I know how to create better designs that are more easily implemented and take advantage of the technologies available to us. So in a traditional model, I might have spent a lot of time designing something that was really hard to implement or downright impossible, emailed it over to a developer or attached it to a story. They would have opened it up and like, she's crazy, pitched it back over the wall at me. We would have gone back and forth. We would have argued about it. And in the end, neither of us would have gotten to a solution that we were happy with. And we would have wasted a whole bunch of time in the process. But by working closely together, we were able to improve communication and come to a solution together that works for the benefit of all. So if you understand a bit about what the other person on your team does, you can communicate with them more clearly and efficiently. And the cherry on top of this is that the more you work together, the more you feel like you're on a team together and not just a step in a delivery machine. So when you run into difficult challenges that are more difficult than where does this button go on this screen, you have a relationship between design and development and product management that you can work through those things together. So, next story. Building a fully functioning mobile app beta for users on Android and iOS. So, several years ago, I was actually a product manager on a mobile app for in-home care managers. This was a brand new product. We needed to validate whether or not this would actually solve the problem. We had a couple of business goals. One was to reduce documentation time, which reduces costs and actually enables more care to be delivered to members in the home, because the job of a care manager is to provide care, not write documentation about the care they provided. So we wanted to reduce documentation time and improve documentation quality. So what was happening is a lot of times these people were going in and taking a lot of notes on paper and then going home at the end of the day, many hours later, and transcribing this stuff into a web app. And the business had this hypothesis that by providing them with a mobile app, that they could do some of this stuff in real time while they were in the home, thus reducing the amount of time it took and improving the quality because it's closer to the source. So those are big hypotheses. This is a brand new product. Mobile app development is not a super cheap endeavor, right? And so we wanted to get to a beta in 3 months so that we could validate or invalidate the whole concept of this product. So we had this big question. What platform do we start with? Our designers were really advocating for native mobile app development because they perceived it would have an improved user experience, the best user experience that we could deliver to our users. And so we didn't know if we should start with Android or iOS. So we thought, well, let's find out what our users actually use. So we surveyed all of our users. There were a couple thousand of them, and we got a pretty good response rate. So we feel like we had good data on whether or not, or which platform our users were using, and it was 49% iOS and 51% Android. Does not help us make a decision at all, right? So our developers suggested a multi-platform framework so that we could build once, deploy to both, get out to more users faster, and be more efficient. Okay, let's do it. We all agreed that we would make sure we would invest in the user experience and make sure it was the highest quality that it could be on Cordova. We went with Cordova. They felt confident, our developers felt confident they could deliver a great user experience by working with design closely. So we've got 3 months to get our beta out. We start development. We are 2 months in, and Stack Overflow does a survey of developers, which they do every year, with a lot of questions. This was the funnest question and most relevant to our team. Cordova was rated the most dreaded framework by the Stack Overflow community. This was borne out by the feedback that we were getting from the developers on the team, that they were absolutely miserable. You could see it in their faces. They would show up to work and sit down like they were going into the coal mines, right? Like, oh my God, this is the worst framework. I can't get anything done. They felt like they were hitting a wall. At the same time, the designers were really unhappy with the quality of the experience because the developers had not anticipated, and how could they, that they would have so many struggles with this framework. And it was impacting the user experience. There were weird little animation issues and buggy things that just made the app feel like it wasn't solid. And our users were telling us that, and that's not the kind of experience we want to deliver. So everybody starts advocating for a rewrite. We're 2 months in, we're 4 weeks away from our projected beta launch. Designers, developers, everyone on the team is saying, we need to just throw this all away and start over. It's okay, we'll be able to go faster because we know what features we want to build. I'm really good at native development. It'll go much faster. So I, as the product manager, am freaking out because I don't see any way that we certainly can't get this done in 4 weeks. That's insane. I'm going to have to go to our stakeholders and say we need to push the date because we need to rewrite this thing. I have good justification for it, but nobody wants to push a date if they don't have to. So instead of decision by PM dictate, which I could have done, I could have, thrown my weight around and said, oh, the stakeholders, oh, the sponsors, and forced us to march down this path. We as a team got together in a conference room and had a discussion about the pros and cons of a rewrite versus powering through. The pros and cons long-term versus short-term of switching versus sticking with Cordova. Eventually, the team decided that we should make it to the beta before we made any drastic decisions. This may seem kind of obvious, but the team came to that conclusion themselves. It wasn't the product manager coming down and saying, this is what we're going to do. And that brings us to our second key takeaway. Collaboration facilitates better decisions faster and with ownership. So if I had said, we're going to do it this way because I said so, the team probably would have done it. We had a fair level of trust. We liked each other, and ultimately, we all just want to get things done. But they wouldn't have been happy about it, and they definitely wouldn't have understood why we went that route. They would have felt disempowered and not engaged in that decision. But because we worked together to make the decision, we all understood it deeply. We knew what trade-offs we were making in this particular situation. We were bought into getting these results as a team, and we all understood that while the situation was not ideal, we were unified in our goal, right? So despite still working in Cordova, the developers were not showing up shoulders slumped and frustrated. They felt like they were kind of in this together and wanted to see the results of the beta before they made decisions or made changes. All right, one more story. So building an app for hardware that doesn't exist yet. How fun. Product managers and product designers work together to turn user needs into realized value. So we create software solutions for problems real people have. Several years ago, while I was working as a product designer, also at the health insurance company, I was working really closely with a product manager on an app for the Apple Watch. It was called Q. It's not available anymore. This was years ago. But at the time, the watch was not out yet. We knew that the watch was going to be launched in spring of the following year. This was like late fall. Actually, it may have been, I think it was like around January that we had the idea, and we knew the watch was coming out around April. So there's all this discussion about, oh, we want to have an app on the Apple Watch. We're a health insurance company. The Apple Watch is all about health. If you remember when it first launched, the primary focus of the device was to help people be more aware of the physicality of their health. Like, are you taking steps? Are you standing up instead of sitting down all day? And a lot of the talk around the device was focused on health. So as a health insurance company, great opportunity for us to make a play here and launch when the watch launches so that we can be seen as a really forward-thinking, customer-centered digital health company. By the time we got funding in place and assembled a team, we figured we had about 5 weeks to design, build, and ship the app. We actually didn't know the actual release date of the watch because in typical Apple fashion, they're kind of cagey about this stuff and they don't let you know until the last minute. But they had released the developer kit so we could actually start development, but we didn't have the hardware. So with one designer, myself, one product manager, and a single pair of engineers, we sat down and got to work. We had a core idea of what we wanted the app to do. It was going to be a reminder app that basically sends you notifications to do things like drink more water or take some steps. So it was pretty simple functionality, but we were building for a platform for hardware that none of us had ever worked on before, and really no one had any prior expertise. There were Google smartwatches out there, Android smartwatches, but they were kind of different and they were all still pretty new. But by working really, really closely together between design and product management, we were able to rapid prototype on paper designs that the same day we got feedback from users would immediately go into development with the engineers who were sitting right next to us. When they found a roadblock that they couldn't get through, they would turn to us and say, hey, I don't think I can build that screen the way that you wanted to. Is this okay instead? Hey, yeah, that's great. Let me tweak this icon a little bit so it looks better on that screen. Constant back and forth. A couple of huge benefits here. 5 weeks, 5 people. We actually proposed a design idea for a screen to Apple that they didn't think that we could build, and we built it. We were presenting to them. We actually got the chance to have some of their team review our ideas before the watch launched because they had some early adopters who they wanted to make sure had solid apps. And we presented this screen to them that had like a little chart of accumulated like times that you had drank a bottle of water. And they were like, I'm not sure you can lay that out that way. We were like, we're pretty sure that we can. And we did. So that was really cool. And then we also got invited to California to go to the Apple Watch lab and test our app on the device before it was released to the public. So I went to Apple. They took my iPhone from me and put tape over the camera so I could leak any secret information about the watch. And we were in this room with a whole bunch of other teams who had been working on watch apps, most of whom couldn't even get their app to build and deploy to the device, whereas ours was pretty much done. We tweaked a color and an icon, and it was ready to go. And we still had a week before the watch launched. So then on launch day, we were actually featured in the App Store as one of the top apps in the health and fitness category, which I feel like is a huge accomplishment for an enterprise health insurance company to be delivering software on a brand new piece of hardware. So, third key takeaway, collaboration de-risks product development. This was a hugely risky scenario. We could have tried for 5 weeks and gotten nothing accomplished if we were writing requirements documents, passing things back and forth through email or across locations. But because we were invested, dedicated, and owning this product together, we saw success. So, getting a little low on time. So let's touch real quickly on what does true collaboration look like. So in these stories, I've talked about, oh, we worked together. It was great. How did we do this? It wasn't by sending emails back and forth. It wasn't handoffs. Often when we think about collaboration, we think, oh, I just need to send some information back and forth. We sometimes think that by handing off a deliverable to the next person in the process, or by sending an email, that we're being collaborative. Designers will hand off designs to developers with no conversation, no explanation of the design. Developers will change those designs because the delivered design wasn't actually possible. Happens all the time. Product managers will deprioritize features because they didn't understand the user need, or because there's a business concern that has to take precedence. Or major projects will just get totally scrapped because teams will get blindsided by tech advancements. I've worked on mobile apps that got totally canned because an iOS update came out that nobody saw coming, and we couldn't adjust. So oftentimes the reaction to difficult situations is to increase process. We close ranks, we put in review cycles, we formalize handoffs to make sure that people are following the instructions that they're supposed to follow. But those things just delay our delivery and cause more problems. So the true solution is balanced teams. working together across our disciplines. In each of these stories, the success moment was not about me as a designer being a rock star, or the developer being a genius at software engineering, or the product manager being a whiz at business analysis and prioritization. It was because we worked together. It helps us respond to change faster and learn and grow as professionals so that we can respond to the marketplace with a diverse and effective set of skills. So, the roles on a balanced team, the typical roles, the template for a balanced team: product management, design, and engineering. There are other roles that you can insert into this. What's important is that you have the roles that you need to have effective cross-disciplinary conversations, and that these people are dedicated to your team, that you have all the people that you need to get the job done without depending on outside people who don't have the same timeline as you. These are some of the things that pairs of roles can collaborate on, so I've touched on some of these in my stories. Product management and design can often collaborate on user research to get insights into the backlog faster. Design and engineering, the classic place for collaboration here is implementation of features so that you can adjust the little fiddly bits on the fly. And engineering and product management can collaborate to make the most of tech. What is the right tech stack? What is the right framework? What are the trade-offs? And again, the key of all of these is understanding the trade-offs. So the stories I've shared today are just a few examples from my personal experience. I'm sure anyone who's worked on a balanced team has their stories as well. I encourage you to seek them out while they're here. And regardless of our role, we can all work together with others to make something greater than the sum of our parts. That's what makes balanced teams magic. That's where the magic comes in. It's at that intersection. And if we want to deal with the myriad problems that we face as technologists in the world of rapid change, we have to work together. So thank you.